Welcome into the Sports Take Show. Matthew Coller along with Derek Wetmore, and we've got some Twins news for the day. The Twins parting ways with one Trevor Plouffe. Derek, your instant, hot, fast reaction to Trevor Plouffe being let go by the Twins.
My hot, fast reaction is that it's a logical move. I mean, Plouffe had one more year in the salary arbitration where he would have made probably somewhere between $8 and $9 million. And so for the Twins to clear that space off their books and also clear a spot at third base, I think it makes some sense. It's too bad for Plouffe. The last 2 years, I think, have really been marred by injuries. But you can't look at the stats page and say this guy was going to be worth stealing the spot and be worth $9 million. So my quick take is that it's a logical move, and it's too bad it didn't work out better for Plouffe in Minnesota.
So you mentioned opening up third base, and that seems to naturally mean opening up third base for Miguel Sano.
Trying to figure that out, because in talking with some Twins people 2 weeks ago, there's a belief among this new regime that Sano to the outfield is not dead, that they think he could be a possibility as a corner outfielder or as a third baseman. Look, based on what we saw Miguel Sano at third base last year, I am really, really questioning if he's going to ever be a good everyday third baseman. He had his moments, and his arm strength is phenomenal, but he was just too wildly inconsistent with his throws, with his glove, and with even catching pop-ups. I don't know that you trust him for 162 games to be your third baseman. Maybe he winds up being like a first base DH slugger, and that would be fine too. It would just be less than what the Twins probably thought they were getting 2-3 years ago when Miguel Sano was tearing up the minor leagues.
Do we know if he has a preference for where he would like to play? Does he think he's a third baseman? Does he think he's a first baseman or an outfielder? Him playing in the outfield to me seems like a really poor idea considering his girth, if you will. And if he just doesn't have the chops at third base, learning on the job is pretty tough for a team that does want to show some progress. First base just makes the most sense. But do you know if he likes one over the other?
Yeah, I've actually talked to Sano a lot about this over the years, even dating back to his minor league days. He sees himself as a third baseman, and he looks at some of the best ones and wants to be in that same conversation someday. I'll give him this. He's got ambition, and I think he cares a lot more about being good than some people do give him credit for. I do think that some of his 2016 struggles are on him, reporting to spring training, not in the best of shape. And then when faced with a really difficult and probably unfair challenge of playing right field, I don't think he took it all that seriously. I think he just kind of thought he could roll out of bed and be a right fielder. With that being said, I think he's still young. I think you're still seeing a maturing young man. And I think you'll eventually see Miguel Sano turn himself into a better player with his talent and work ethic. But I think it's fair to say that he has very open question marks about his ability to play third base. But if he was choosing, I think he'd want to be an everyday third baseman.
Now, let me say this about Trevor Plouffe. Even though Trevor Plouffe was never a star player, you look at his OPS plus for 7 years in Major League Baseball, it's a 99. So you're basically your average player. 247 hitter, over 162 games average, 22 home runs. Those things are all an average corner infielder. Average can be hard to replace sometimes. Yeah. Whether you're opening up a spot for Sano to move to third, but then there's somebody in the outfield you need to replace, or whether you're opening up a spot at third to put a free agent there or another prospect. Sometimes teams get caught up, and I'm not saying this is a mistake because you mentioned some of his injury issues, but sometimes they get caught up on, the guy is just average and we need better than average. And then you discover that average is not always just right at your fingertips all over the league.
It's not an easy thing to do necessarily, but if you're looking to do it, if you're looking to build a roster as efficiently as possible from a financial perspective, okay, then it makes sense. If you think Sano can be your third baseman, you free up that $8 or $9 million and go spend it on pitching or something like that. So the theory goes. And the other thing about Trevor Plouffe that's been difficult for me as a stats first baseball analyst is, like, I watched Trevor Plouffe play and I've watched his development over these past couple seasons, and I just think there's a better player in there. If it wasn't for various rib injuries and wrist stuff over the past couple seasons, I do think he's a better player than what the stats page shows. But hear this, Matthew. You're a stats guy yourself. Here's Trevor Plouffe's line from 2016 in only about 350 plate appearances. 260 average, 303 on base, 420 slugging. You hear that and you're like, well, that's below average for a third baseman, and you wouldn't really want that. But it was a down year for Plouffe, right? Here are his career numbers. 247 average, 308 on base, 420 slugging. Basically the exact same line. Maybe a little bit stronger career line than 2016 line. That's what's been so troubling for me, is I see a better player in there. It hasn't come out, and for his whole career now, he's basically been this player, which is consistent but not necessarily wowing you at the third base position.